Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. We begin a conversation today with Dr. Irwin Lutzer of Chicago on keeping New Year's resolutions. I have Dr. Irwin Lutzer on the line from Chicago. He is the Senior Pastor Emeritus of Moody Church in Chicago and is also heard here on WIHS, I think, just about every day of the week in one form or another, Dr. Lutzer. It's a pleasure to have you on the phone line today.
Well, I'm so glad to be with you today, Paul, and God bless you and your audience.
You have been pondering the issue of keeping New Year's resolutions. That's kind of almost a dead horse in the sense that everyone talks about it, everyone beats on it, but no one ever seems to come up with any solutions as to why we do or don't keep resolutions. In your own life, pastoral and otherwise, how have you approached the issue of resolutions, and do people put more emphasis on them than maybe they ought to?
Paul, one of the first things we have to do is to have reasonable resolutions. There are people who want to make these dramatic changes, and it's really above their commitment, and they're going to drop it very soon. So make a reasonable resolution. But the reason we even break those kinds of resolutions is because no matter how much we pride ourselves in being run and controlled intellectually and with facts, the point is simply that we are desire-driven. And it's really our desires that choose what we're going to even believe at times. And it's desires that want us to revert back to old patterns instead of forging new ones. And we all tend toward laziness and that which is familiar. So there are people who make certain resolutions about dieting or whatever, and within the first week, those resolutions are broken. What you and I need to know is that really it is God who is able to change our desires, and that our desire to live differently would be so strong that it would carry us. And one other thing, when we do fail, the answer is not to simply give up, but to start again.
I have heard before that is one thing that people remember when some who need to do so go through 12-step programs, that even though they may fall off the wagon for a day or two or, several perhaps or more, that doesn't mean that just because they made a resolution and didn't follow through until the end of their life, that doesn't mean they can't just pick up where they left off. And that sounds like what you're saying. Exactly.
And, someone has well said that the Christian life is a series of new beginnings. So we always begin again, and that's where we are at.
Do people undertake resolutions routinely with such big goals in mind that it's almost like they've set themselves up for failures?
I think so. And what drives many of them is guilt. They know that they should be living differently. They know that they should stop, certain addictions or whatever, but they don't really have the power to do that. And even Paul the Apostle struggled in Romans 7 with saying, I want to do what is right, but there's something within me that drags me down and I can't carry it out. And what is his answer? Well, in the next chapter, he talks about focusing on the mind of Christ, what Christ has already done for us. And God doesn't ask us to do anything that Christ has not already done on our behalf. So that's really the direction that we need to go.
Would it make more sense to resolve to do things with the help of God at any time during the year, considering that you just referred a moment ago to new beginnings, that it's possible, even most likely, that our beginnings will happen just about any of the 365 days in the year, and if it's a leap year, even that extra day can be accounted for as a new start?
I remember a woman who struggled with alcoholism, and I used to pray with her. This is when I was pastor of Moody Church, and whenever she fell back into it and she repented, her opening words were always, "Father, you know how much I love you, and I want to be cleansed, and I want a new beginning." And she had to pray that prayer many times, many struggles, but don't stay. So my advice is don't stay in the ditch. Begin again.
When it comes to the life of a pastor, do you or have you come across people from time to time over the course of your ministry that faced questions like that lady did?
Oh, all the time. I mean, addiction is everywhere. And so oftentimes people are facing those kinds of issues. And, you know, an addict is somebody who has been blinded by the absorption of sin, and there are appetites that are strengthened and developed. And so it's not an easy road, and we need others to help us. And that's why there are programs out there for people, but we also need God very much to help us, because we are helpless apart from His intervention.
In addition to dealing with people on a one-on-one basis like that, if you did, how often did you address that issue in your congregation-wide ministry, knowing that there were perhaps many people within the sanctuary there that had that same issue, but they hadn't yet had the nerve or whatever to approach you on it?
Well, and often people didn't approach me. They approached others, though. But if you're talking about, did I ever preach about addiction, the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, I did that quite often, taking it from different standpoints, because that's where people are at. In fact, one time I talked about how women were being abused, and we had a hotline for all those women who needed help, and we actually began for a time an organization where women could come who were abused to receive help and healing. So that's part of being a pastor.
Yeah. In terms of your writing, you have many books, as many of us who have followed you to one degree or another over the years have read. You have one that you are thinking about right now and would like to speak about and share some of your impressions on what you have set down in paper and shared with other people. Could you tell us what the title of that book is now, sir?
Yeah, it's entitled, "We Will Not Be Silenced, Confronting Courageously Our Culture's Assault on Christianity." Paul, this book is so critical because I realize that the radical left does not believe that America can be fixed. It has to be destroyed and rebuilt on a Marxist foundation. And I show how Marxism has infiltrated all different aspects of society. It's cultural Marxism, which means it is done incrementally. Black Lives Matter. Of course Black Lives Matter. We all agree with that, but the organization that uses that mantra confesses it is Marxist. But I show not only that it is really this view that is vilifying our history, which is terrible. One of the reasons I wrote it is so that parents would understand why it is that when their kids came back from college, they ended up hating America. So I discuss that, the whole issue of racism. Something else, I point out that all these diversity studies that are done in universities are actually intended to make the races farther apart. There is no interest in racial reconciliation. And then I show how Marxism influences the idea of a lack of free speech. And I have a chapter on propaganda. How does it work? Very quickly, propaganda is intended to shape people's view of reality that even when confronted with a mountain of evidence, they will not change. And from there, I discuss socialism, the sexualization of children.
This has been part one of 2 conversations with Dr. Irwin Lutzer on keeping New Year's resolutions. He'll return tomorrow. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.